Captain Gary Campbell was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He attended Washington and Jefferson College, where he majored in chemistry, English, and Army ROTC. After his graduation in 1966, he attended the Chemical Officer Basic Course, and after graduation, went to his first operational Army assignment as Munitions Platoon Leader, Field Support Company, U.S. Army Chemical Center and School, Fort McClellan, Alabama. In a pattern that repeated itself throughout his career, Gary volunteered to take on tough jobs. He organized, trained, and led the Fort McClellan Funeral Detail, supporting funerals in Alabama and Mississippi. As a white officer leading an integrated funeral detail in the segregated South at a time of ever-increasing deaths in Vietnam, Gary faced a challenging yet rewarding situation. Funerals were always held on weekends and often in one-room churches on the edge of cotton fields. Gary recalls his soldiers were welcomed by the families of the deceased and other parishioners, but shunned by hotels and restaurants. Restaurants were even less accepting than hotels. The sad irony was the African American soldiers they were burying were not welcome in the same establishments when they were alive. To shield the families from distractions during their grief and keep his soldiers focused on their mission, Gary personally arranged for all accommodations and meals. Nearing the end of his tour at Fort McClellan, he received orders to Korea, but volunteered for Vietnam instead. He arrived in June 1967 and was assigned to command the 27th Chemical Detachment, 196th Separate Infantry Brigade, LIB. The 196 operated in I Corps, the region nearest North Vietnam and adjacent to the DMZ. The 27th Chemical Detachment's role was to provide NBR staff services as needed: chemical detection and NBR reconnaissance, radiation monitoring, and smoke decontamination support. Recognizing early on that U.S. Army combat missions would be more successful if the 196 could better see the enemy, he recommended, then oversaw defoliation of areas slated for operations. The use of defoliate 245T, commonly called Agent Orange. At that time, 245T was in common use. This was, of course, well before anyone knew the lasting health effects of Agent Orange. He also ran the CS interdiction program for dropping CS powder using homemade explosive devices on enemy travel routes and in tunnels used by the NVA and Viet Cong. He also became officer in charge for sniffer missions, becoming an expert and trailblazer for the technology of hidden personnel detectors and the potential use of sniffer operations. After witnessing the sniffer in action, other corps and divisions saw its value and began to use it. Gary was recognized for his work that expanded the U.S. Army, the U.S. military's detection capabilities and saved countless lives, all of which reflect a positive image of the Chemical Corps. Nowhere were Gary's collective actions more apparent than during the Vietnamese New Year Tet Offensive in 1968. Through intelligence gathered from captured NVA documents and sniffer missions, when elements of the NVA's 2nd Division struck 196 positions on the early morning of 3 January 1968, the 196 was ready. It met the attack with devastating firepower, and the attack quickly faltered. He was awarded the Combat Infantryman Badge, a very rare award to any soldier other than an infantryman. He was also awarded the Bronze Star, Air Medal, with 2 oak leaf clusters, and non-crew member air wings. His combat tour complete, Gary returned to the United States and was dual-hatted as commander of the Fort Ord Chemical Detachment and Chief, G3 Chemical Division. Captain Gary E. Campbell left the Army after 3 years' service on 15 July 1969. He was with troops and commanded units his entire time in the Army, and left the Army a better place than he found it. On 25 April 2022, the mayor of Roswell, Georgia, declared Gary an esteemed veteran of Roswell. His military service in the Chemical Corps and his civilian service thereafter were marked by momentous achievements, heroism in the face of a brutal enemy, total professionalism, and singular humility. He focused on more than following orders. He added value, always delivering more than asked, no matter how hard the task. Now coming to the stage is Captain Campbell and the regimental leadership.
Awesome. There it is. There it is. Get behind me. Good stuff, man. That's awesome. That's a good story. No. Awesome.
You know, they say we stand or sit on the shoulders of heroes. And this gentleman right here is exactly that. You just heard his long bio. We don't give the Hawk or the Hall of Fame to just anybody. His legacy is going to continue beyond even today. So on behalf of the thankful regiment, really, really appreciate everything you've done for us. So.
Awesome. Heck yeah, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Gary Campbell.
Thanks for welcoming an old man to this event. Don't ask me to dance because I think I forgot. Nevertheless, I can't tell you how honored I am to be with you guys and receive this kind of award. It's not something I really sought or went after like many of you. It's what we do. And what we do is exemplified by some of the folk that are accompanying me right now. My wife of 58 years. 58 years, a little aside, one R&R that I had from Vietnam to Hawaii, she joined in Hawaii 10 days before I got there. And why was I so late? There was a thing called the Tet Offensive going on. They canceled all leaves, obviously. But eventually I got there, but she wouldn't leave. So she stayed in Fort Tarusi and gave out malaria pills for every arriving bus and the boys from Vietnam. So that's... Next to her are friends that I've had for 50 years. So by the way, this is not nerves, this is Parkinson's. And that's a factor of Agent Orange. But believe me, I'm very lucky. Right next to Pam is a guy, also a 50-year friend, retired colonel, Transportation Corps Hall of Fame.
Nice.
Incredible. I loved hearing the comments this morning or this afternoon about the dedication that everybody in this room has had, because obviously it takes that. And one of the things that I think was mentioned is I think that at the heart of a soldier or anybody is some sort of core values that drive them. One of the tests that you use in business when you interview to find out a little about depth of people is you say, what would you like your tombstone to read? Well, in my case, that answer to that question is he added value. And that's going to work every day and trying to say, how do we improve things a little incrementally than it was just to make it work before. Hence, most of the action that we had in Vietnam was that, because sniffer or that kind of technology wasn't widely used when I got there in Vietnam. But it seemed when I was there, the brigade commander sent me down to Saigon for some training with other chemical officers that were in RVM. And that training surrounded various types of technology kinds of issues, one of which was the sniffer mission. That device that could detect in the air ammonia and coupled with human perspiration, develops ammonium chloride, in case there's any chemists living. That particular effervescence allowed meters to turn and us to be able to say, are there people there, or is there something like a fire? But there's activity. Or if they didn't register, there wasn't any. Now, the value of that, it seems to be obvious, but another value of that is the North Vietnamese strategy in battle was to confront us directly for a period of normally 3 days, let's say, and then disappear into the jungle, absolutely disappear, no trace at all. So this particular tool enabled us to find out and trace where they went. So it was invaluable, obviously, to the intelligence driving of where the brigade, and frankly, headquarters where I was really was a 3rd Marine Division area of operation. We were attached to the 3rd Marine Division, 196th Brigade. So anyhow, so that tool was extremely important. And I don't know if any of you have come across it in your travels, or if they still use it or not anymore, but it was certainly very helpful in what we were doing. So my time in the Chemical Corps, I was a very proud person. And my first boss is on your list of Hall of Fame. His name is Peter Nolan. Unfortunately, he's deceased. He's West Point grad and an absolute tremendous leader. But it's those kind of people, and you, that make the Corps give substance. So I salute you, I thank you, and I'll see you over here.
Thank you, Captain Campbell. Let us give a hearty round of applause for Captain Campbell's induction into the Hall